So welcome to this week's Therapeutic Tuesday. And in this week's mini session, I'm working with Judith, and it was a kind of initial exploration of what's been happening with her fatigue. And where we ended up going was the kind of really the realization that she needed a lot more information about what's going on for her. I am a very strong believer that accurate diagnosis and really having clarity of why someone has the symptoms they have is a really important part of clarifying how we then start to work with it. And I think people often forget that there are answers, but we need to have the right data to get those answers. Now, there is a caveat in this session. One of the things that Judith is talking about is having been bitten by a horsefly and that being a trigger point towards tipping more into her experience. And I make the association between that horsefly bite and possible Lyme. And there is some spurious evidence that suggests there can be a correlation. But after this session, I decided to go and check on that a bit more and came to the conclusion that it's an unlikely association. So that piece I want to add a caveat to, although I do think my steering around co-infections and Lyme is still valid within this consultation. I should also say that I am not a functional medicine practitioner or nutritional therapist. My work is on the psychology side. I think you guys be aware of that having watched many of these videos. But I do have an oversight within Optimum Health Clinic, and really just what becomes to me very clear in this session is more clarity is needed. So I think this is a really good for someone that's got a myriad of different symptoms and wondering what's happening, why it's happening, and where do you go with that. I think this session will be a really helpful way of making more sense of that.
First of all, thank you so much. And thank you for everything you do, because you've absolutely been a lifesaver to me. I can't tell you. I can't tell you what you've done for me, really. My problem now is I was diagnosed in 2014, and the first 2 years was a progress. You know, the first 8 months were in bed, couldn't wash my hair, couldn't do anything. And then I've got stuck in the way you describe overwhelm.
Okay.
The last 3 years, I feel as though I've made absolutely no progress. And I've incorporated all the strategies. Sometimes I know what I've done wrong, and other times I don't. And I keep blaming myself. I first of all, I know I'm my worst enemy. You know, I keep repeating the achiever patterns, which I've learned such a lot about myself. So I have to rein that in, which I do. But at I'm 66, so it's very, very hard to change your personality. But I'm trying, and sometimes I succeed, sometimes I don't. But I do feel overwhelmed.
Okay.
That last video was so useful to me, and I hope this video helps other people that maybe are stuck like I am. I'm just stuck.
And when you say you improved, I'm going to jump around with questions. And obviously, I don't have, normally when I do a traditional new patient, I have a very deep amount of information that the team gathers. So I'm slightly kind of jumping in at different places, and hopefully
my hope is I can come down to London at some stage and join the group, but that would be beyond me.
Right.
At the moment.
Yeah.
I went to London last year and it put me in bed for 2 months.
Because
of the underground and the stairs. It was just...
Okay. So in that first couple of years that you improved, what was the source of that improvement, do you think?
I had a marvellous doctor who understood ME very, very well. And I went to see an endocrinologist. I had all the tests done, and then she put me got me to see a very good practitioner with Stockport NHS called Tina Betts. Now, she transformed my life because she started me on the diary, the activity and the meditation and the breathing, which has transformed my life, really. And I could see that, oh, yes, I could do things that I couldn't. You see, my determination in many ways is my undoing, because when I was bedridden, I myself was the motivation. I'm not staying in bed beyond 11 o'clock. And when it's Ken Bruce's quiz, I get out of bed and I used to crawl on my hands and knees from my bed to this room, which is my comfort room, just to get a change of scenery.
Yes.
And because I was determined I wasn't going to stay in bed. And then I stuck myself under a shower and went out and went to the first tree and then came back again. So I very, very slowly built up my strength and had began to join the outside world. Now, that went on for 2 years. I made steady progress. I started to walk further. And then I've not got any further. I've really not got any further. I know in myself, because I think, oh, actually, this time last year, I could walk further than I'm doing now. And that's very dispiriting, really.
Of course.
And I know I've got to be patient. And I am a patient person, but I seem to be using all my strategies.
Yes.
But not getting anywhere.
Yeah, no, I hear you. What have you done in terms of getting to the bottom of what's happening on a physical level, in terms of understanding in terms of what's in balance, what's out of balance? Yeah.
Well, in my 40s, I had a breast cancer scare, and I had a biopsy and I got MRSA, and I was very, very ill. And was lucky to survive. And I was teaching then in those days, and I had about 6 weeks off school, and then I went back to school. And then I kept getting infection after infection, tonsillitis, you name it, I got it. And after 18 months, I realised I couldn't continue, and I got early retirement, and I decided I would build my strength up, and I did. And in my 50s, I blossomed. And then at the end of 2013, I was bitten by a horsefly, and I had an allergic reaction, and my arm swelled up. And I went to the emergency doctor, and they gave me penicillin. Thank goodness I did. But then within a few weeks, I was bedridden. That was the trigger.
What are your primary symptoms now, apart from obviously fatigue? What are the main symptoms?
My primary symptoms are when I have a crisis, which I have fairly regularly, I get diarrhea and a loss of appetite. Now, when I first started to get ill, I couldn't eat. The nausea was horrendous. And in the end, if I tried to eat, it made it worse. I got myself on cod liver oil and malt because I thought, well, it'll go down because it's an emulsion, and that's what got my appetite back. But I noticed yesterday I had been overdoing it a little bit, and the diarrhea starts. The lack of appetite starts, the headaches, the high temperature, and the joint pain. And it's random. 1 minute it's a lead head for days and a brain fog, and then it goes. Or another time it's the appetite's gone and the diarrhea. Yes. But those are my main symptoms. And it was my main symptom when I first got ill. Was the loss of appetite. Okay. And I listened to the Indian doctor that was on the blog the last time about inflammation being on the vagus part of the nerve, the vagus part of the brain. And I thought, yes, that rings true. So I've tried to get my diet sorted out and take the probiotics, and I've changed everything about my diet in that. Oh, another thing that's predominant with me is hormonal feelings. Now I'm 66 and I shouldn't be getting period pains.
Sure.
And I was getting period pains. Now, unfortunately, my gorgeous doctor who knew about ME has retired, and I've gone to a new doctor. And I said, I've got period pains. I'm very concerned. I'm in my 60s. The menopause is well and truly gone. And I said, is it linked to the ME? And she said, what's ME? She said, is it disturbed sleep patterns? Well, I could have just, quite frankly, I could have just.
I'm going to laugh because it's the most polite.
You could weep, couldn't you? You could really weep. Yeah. But I thought, oh, I can't be bothered. I'm going home. I'm just.
Have you had further investigation in terms of your digestive symptoms? Because
no.
I just want to kind of break down a little bit here that obviously my speciality is on the psychology side.
Yes.
But I also have a keen and deep interest, let's say, in what's happening on the physical side, particularly we have a whole team of people on that side. And there are certain kind of red flags that are triggering for me as we kind of go into it. And to back up for a second, what I think is also important to say is that getting a stable baseline is really important.
Yes.
And it sounds like that you were perhaps a little bit harsh in the way that you did it to yourself in terms of forcing yourself to a baseline. And I wouldn't necessarily quite encourage it that way, but that's the achiever pattern kind of an action. But nonetheless, you did get a baseline. And then what's happening is it sounds like there's not really improvement above that baseline. Despite the fact you're working hard to be in a calm state, you're working hard to do the best you can to manage symptoms that are happening. So immediately the kind of the series of questions that's going through my head is, what are the possible things that could be causing the fatigue, the joint pain, the digestive symptoms? And for example, one of the things that comes to my mind is, have you ever been tested for Lyme disease?
I have twice, because I thought it was Lyme's disease, and it came back negative.
And that was a standard GP test, or that was standard more? GP. It's always.
I thought myself Lyme's disease because when I went, she drew a ring here where the horsefly bite was, and this was just pus, and it didn't go down for days. But as a family, we are quite liverish. I have a condition called Gilbert's disease. Do you know about Gilbert's?
I've heard of it. Yeah, I don't know a lot about it. Yeah,
it's high. What is it in the liver? High levels of, when you have an infection.
Yeah.
Gosh, I've forgotten, but I have high levels, bilirubin levels.
Yeah. Okay.
I've also had my gallbladder out when I was 22. We are liverish as a family.
Yeah.
And I don't remember a time, even as a little girl, when I didn't wake up and feel nauseous.
Yeah.
I've always been nauseous.
Yeah. I should say I don't believe in coincidence when it's as blatant as what you're describing, which is that before you got the horsefly bite, did you had signs of fatigue already or not?
Looking back, yes. I didn't think about it until I was absolutely floored. But when I turned 60, and I remember going to London to see my stepson, and we went to see the changing of the guards, and I started to vomit behind, and I thought, I'm going to be sick in public, and I went behind a wall and was vomiting. And I look at pictures of myself and I look white. And I thought, I didn't feel well then. I was starting to go downhill.
So
we'd had a lot of trauma in our lives. When I look back at the 5 years prior to that, I had left my husband, my first husband. I had moved house 3 times. My mother died. I met my second husband, and within 6 months he got cancer. And when I look back now, I think, Judith, is it any wonder? Because I was just like the swan paddling away, holding it all together.
Yes.
Oh, I'm fine. And I wasn't fine, but I didn't know I wasn't fine, and my personalities, if this nervous energy, I've got to look after everybody.
You're a bit of a helper pattern as well.
Oh yeah. Well, I went to see a psychologist. I had a miscarriage a long time ago, and I couldn't have my own children, which was devastating for me. And he called me a rescuer. You are a rescuer by nature, and I have. And my husband says something quite. He said, you've got this huge well of a maternal instinct, and it's nowhere to go. When I was teaching, it was
yes, you could express.
But I feel I have to look after everybody, and I've got to stop doing that. I can't help.
So just to break it down a bit more, we've got a strong helper pattern, a strong achiever pattern.
Yeah.
We've got some trauma. We've then also, we've got various loads that are on your system, signs of system being weak. So we've then got what I think was probably a significant trigger event, which is bitten by a horsefly.
Yeah, that was the
an immediate warning signs of potential Lyme by the fact that the way that the location reacted to
it did
to the bite.
It was the bullet.
Yeah.
It was definitely, and I was sure it was Lyme disease, but they've tested me twice.
Yeah. Well, then also we have the fact that your symptoms started within 3 weeks of having the bite. And that to me is too strong a coincidence. Now we get into some delicate territory here in a few ways, and probably the few comments I make will make me unpopular with all sides of the equation, but I'll make them anyway. So traditional medical testing for Lyme is helpful, but not there are many false negatives, let's say, that come out.
I've heard that
sort of testing.
I've heard that.
And there are other labs such as Armin Labs in Germany and a few other labs which have, and the science is beyond my area of speciality, but have a number of different ways of looking at testing. And often what you will have is people that will have a standard kind of GP-based Lyme test that comes back negative, and then go and have a test somewhere like that, and they will come back with Lyme or co-infections, and they'll have a whole new set of kind of information there. Yeah. So I've now offended the NHS. I'm now going to offend the Lyme community by saying that I also think that sometimes Lyme can be a red herring. Red herring is a strong word. I think sometimes people can then get a Lyme diagnosis, and then the danger becomes, their entire obsession becomes, I have Lyme, I have to kill Lyme, and once I've done that, everything will be fine. And we see it as part of a much...
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt. It's like you say, in the past, you go and have these blood tests and what have you, and you're disappointed when there doesn't appear to be anything wrong, because you think, I must be going mad, but I'm falling apart, and they're telling me I'm perfectly all right.
Yes.
And I know I'm not all right.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah, and if we go back to the kind of wider kind of history of medicine, and this idea of seeing things from a point of view of germ theory, and saying that it's about a germ, you kill the germ and that's it. But of course, the terrain is also everything, and the state systems in when a pathogen comes in says a lot about how the body deals with that or doesn't deal with that.
Yes.
So whether or not Lyme is part of the picture, it's not as simple as going, oh, maybe it is Lyme, and you get a diagnosis and you take a lot of antibiotics and it's fixed. Often it's more complicated than that, because we also have to look at how do you strengthen the system. And I've seen certainly a handful or so of cases of people that had a chronic fatigue diagnosis, worked a lot on psychology, on nutrition, on balancing their system, got to 90-95% recovery, and then discovered that Lyme was part of the picture, and dealing with Lyme was a bit that took them to 100%. but they'd already got 95% without dealing with the line piece. There are other people that make no progress until they deal with the line piece. So everyone is different, and it's complicated. And, we've got a limited amount of time here. And kind of my goal is to try and find some signposts, really, to be able to go, if I was in your situation, these are the places that I would be looking and I would be exploring. So let's come back to the overall kind of picture. So over the first couple of years, you made some progress by a somewhat harsh way of conditioning baseline, but nonetheless, you had a baseline. And over the 3 years since then, it sounds like you've somewhat maintained that baseline, but you haven't progressed from
Yeah, I'm just exactly the same as I was 3 years ago.
Yeah. Do you feel like you are your body is in a calm, healing state more often than not?
No. I go from little windows of feeling optimistic to generally thinking this is probably my new normal and I've got to manage it, and this is the best it's going to be. That's probably where I am now.
Yeah. So in a sense, it's a healthy, positive thing that one adapts their life where they are. Like the ability that human beings have to normalize to almost anything is why we survive of the fittest. It's why our species survives, because we learn to adapt and kind of manage certain environments. And I think perhaps where you are as well is the place that people get to where you've normalized, and that's a good thing.
I feel quite.
You almost become comfortable in where you are, and that can also sap the motivation or the drive that things could be different.
I think you get tired of striving, and you think, fine, if I can just go for a walk once a month, that will do me.
Yeah.
Whereas really, I want to be walking every day.
Of course.
I want to be an active, middle-aged woman doing as much as she can, and I can't. It's not. I'm not capable of that at the moment. But I would very much like to improve.
Yes. Yeah. So I think you need more data on what's happening on a physical level. Whereabouts are your digestive symptoms? Are they still as you described earlier, or have they settled over time?
It's very much the same, really. I've forgotten. It's very, very unusual for me to have an appetite, and when I wake up and I think, I feel really hungry today. Wow, that's marvelous. I do eat. I make sure I have 3 meals a day. I make sure I have protein every day with every meal. But sometimes it's an absolute struggle to do that. And I can only manage quite small portions, but I make sure that what I'm eating is good.
Yes. And how do you feel after you eat?
Sometimes very nauseous. Sometimes, that's sat nicely.
And do you get bloated after you eat?
Sometimes, yes.
Yeah.
Sometimes. I feel another thing that puzzles me is when I've eaten anything, I feel tired.
Yeah. So some things happening. Generally speaking, food should give us energy unless we have an enormous meal. The kind of typical Sunday lunch where we eat 3 times the amount we should really eat before to sleep afterwards. But if we have a kind of normal amount of food, there should be it should be energizing to the system.
It isn't.
What's happening is you're
isn't for me. It's fatiguing for me.
So again, in my mind, there would be a bunch of red flags around things like small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, or SIBO, is it referred to. Looking at digestive function, like are you breaking down food, things like stomach acid, digestive enzymes. So there's clearly something. If we break it down into different pieces, you're taking in food, which is supposed to be your body's primary source of energy. And then it's draining you to break it down. So it's almost like a negative nutrition. That's not a not eat, because ultimately it's better to eat than not eat, but it's draining you to eat. So it's taking more energy than you're getting back from the digestive process. And then you're not giving that energy, the food's not being metabolized to energy, I would guess, effectively. And so your mitochondria are not getting this, you're not producing energy on a cellular level. That then means your nervous system, your adrenals are having to compensate for the fact there's not normal energy that's there. And then if Lyme is part of the picture, that also means that your system's therefore not nearly as strong and resilient as it might be, to then deal with any kind of immune load that it's dealing with. Now, we can play...
I got the Sarah Myhill book, by the way.
Right. It's an excellent book. Yeah.
Yeah, it is an excellent book. Yes. And I went to see a nutritionist, but I wouldn't have eaten anything if I couldn't have fruit, I couldn't have vegetables, I couldn't have dairy, I couldn't have, and my appetite's so poor. I thought, well, what can I eat? And I tried it for a couple of days, and I felt so nauseous. I don't think she was particularly good, to be honest.
The kind of digestive symptoms that you're describing are sometimes, but not all that often, resolved by food alone. Normally, there's more than just changing diets. And yes, cutting things out can be important, but you also need to be getting enough food, and you need to eat food that you feel like eating. So I think that there's, for what the good news is, there's lots of pieces to work with here. The bad news is that obviously that can be a little overwhelming sometimes, and it's also.
This is why I say I'm stuck in the overwhelm.
Yeah, I understand. I can see that, and I understand why. And I think that then comes back to a question of. So you mentioned you had this excellent doctor that you're working with for a period of time, and then you saw a nutritionist. What's your experience been otherwise in terms of working with practitioners? Like what's been in the way of you reaching out and getting more input to your situation?
Well, unfortunately, my gorgeous GP has retired, and I don't really have faith in. There is another doctor there that I could try, but I wasn't happy with Dr. Chandra. I could go back because they know me at the ME group in Stockport. I could go back to Tina Betts because she's left me all her details. But I've just thought, well, she's told me everything to do when I'm doing it. I mean, I suppose I could go back. You see, now my temperature's gone, phew. I'm going through the roof now, temperature-wise.
Is that because the thought of it all feels quite overwhelming?
No, it just suddenly happens. If I find talking and being, an interaction like this quite tiring.
Yes.
And the temperature goes up when I've been talking for a while.
Yeah, no, I understand.
And that makes me fatigued.
Yes.
But there is. I had great faith in her. So I could go back to her, but again, I suppose I'm prejudging her. I'm thinking, well, I've done everything she said.
Sure.
Where is there to go?
Well, sometimes we also need to try things from a different perspective as well. I mean, just to kind of summarize a little bit from my side, I think as we've talked about it, it's become increasingly clear to me why I think things might be kind of stuck where they are. And I think there are clearly some pieces here that to be worked on, both in terms of some of the underlying personality patterns in terms of the helper, the fact that there's some kind of psychological trauma that's happened there. On a physical level, there are clearly things happening in terms of digestive function. It sounds like the Lyme piece and co-infections needs some deeper investigation in terms of understanding what's happening there. I then think what's happening is that it's obviously just daily life. It's just a struggle in terms of the energy that you've got. And then you start thinking about, well, there's all these things. Where do I go? I tried this. I tried that. I went there. And then it almost just goes to a kind of a shutdown mode of it's all too much, too difficult. Hopefully I got better the first couple of years. Hopefully if I'm just patient, things will get better. So I think part of the way to get out of overwhelm is to not feel like you have to do the whole thing yourself, and having practitioner support where things that have taken practitioners, years to figure out, would take you more than years to figure out because you've got less time to do it. And having that outside perspective and help, I think, is important.
Paramount, yeah.
And I think,
should I go to a dietitian? Should I go to what practitioner should I go to?
I mean, I'm obviously biased, so
Yeah.
I don't want to come across like I'm answering the question in a self-promotional way. But I think that certainly the nutrition team at the Optimum Health Clinic, we do a lot of work.
Yeah.
90% of our patients we work with by telephone and video Skype.
Oh, yes.
So you don't need to be able to travel. But I think whatever you do, whether you come to us or you go elsewhere is not really my agenda at this point. I think
I'd rather use the Optimum Health Clinic, because I've started with you all these years, and it's really been my lifeline.
Yes, and it's great to watch videos, and that's helpful. And obviously, it's very satisfying for me that I can spend half an hour making a video, and then it's really helpful to people. But there are certain things which need, like you need. ME chronic fatigue is not really a diagnosis. It's like you go to your doctor and you say, I feel chronically fatigued, and they put the word syndrome on the end and think you should be satisfied. It's not a diagnosis. It's just a label for what's happening. You need to have the clarity on what's going on in your body, why you have the symptoms that you have.
Yes.
Because then, even if, some people's path to resolution is a straight path, other people, it has lots of twists and turns, and it's nuanced and it's complex. But at least you know what it is that you're dealing with.
Yes.
When you haven't got the clarity, it's like it's very easy to get overwhelmed very quickly, because there's so many different things that could be going on.
Absolutely.
So I think my recommendation would be, and also, you and I are just dancing around the kind of surface. We have a process where you can have a free 15-minute chat with one of the
Yes, a couple of years ago I used that.
Yeah. Well, if it's a couple of years ago, I would suggest doing it again, because things have been fresh since then. And also, one of the new patient coordinators will go much deeper than I've done in terms of kind of gathering information. But I think
I go through Jenny then. Should I go through Jenny Sherman?
Jenny can put you in touch with one of the new patient coordinators. And so she runs the kind of she helps me in terms of the kind of the social media and organizes that. But the whole team obviously work closely together. I think I would obviously encourage you to do that, but even if you don't go down that path, I don't want to make this about the resolution is that Judith has to go to Optimum Health Clinic. So in terms of a more broad kind of resolution, you need clarity on the digestive side, and you definitely need some clarity on the Lyme side. If you've got that, you at least then have, okay, now this is what I know that I need to work with. A little bit like if you think back to your teaching years. If you had a child which was just completely disruptive and all over the place and causing all kinds of issues, you're only managing the behavior until you understand what's going on. And if you get the diagnosis, hang on, this child's got severe dyslexia, and the reason why they're misbehaving so much is because they don't understand, they're completely lost. They're just not following the learning track. Or you go, actually, this child's ADHD, or this child's being beaten by the father. Like, until you know what's at the root of it, all you're doing is managing the behavior. And it's the same thing here. You're only managing symptoms until you've got clarity on what's actually driving it in the first place. I think that will help bring your overwhelm down. Because I think once you have some clarity, even though there's a whole new set of questions that will be born out of that, you'll at least have some clarity, and you'll have a path in terms of what to follow. Yes. That would be my recommendation of the first step to go from here. And
I shall go for it.
Yeah.
I'm going to go for it.
Great. I will send a note. What I'm going to do is I'll send a note, because Jenny's on holiday for a couple of days. I'll send a note to one of the new patient coordinators. They'll get in touch. You can have a much more thorough chat with them on the phone. And it may be that if you decide to go down that path, I stand corrected by my own practitioners that have more experience on the physical side. I may absolutely be kind of stand corrected on it. But I certainly think, to me, they're very, very clear red flags in terms of you got bitten by a horsefly, you had a reaction to it, and symptoms significantly increased within 3 weeks after that. That's a massive thing to look at.
It's huge.
And the digestive side that's been there right the way through, there's clearly something. Those two things alone definitely warrant further investigation. Clarity will reduce overwhelm, and having support and having a path forward will also reduce overwhelm. I think you've done a remarkable job doing as much as you've done by yourself, by watching videos. I think it's just having that additional support would be.
Well, it's honestly, I can't speak more highly of the clinic. It's been my lifeline. It really has been my lifeline. So thank you for everything you do.
No, my pleasure, Judith. It's been lovely to chat. I'm glad we got the technology working, and I will. I will have.
Manage it again. I don't know. Fingers crossed. I've done it once.
No, it's all good. And I will get one of the team, it'll either be Tara or Joe, who look after the new patient process.
Wonderful.
I'll get set up a 15-minute chat. I'll write up some notes from our conversation, and let's see where we go from there.
Thank you very much indeed, and I shall follow your lead.
Right, my pleasure to chat. Lovely to talk to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Alex.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Thank you.
I hope you found that helpful. As it happened, the outcome of this mini session, that wasn't my intention, Judith decided to come and do some nutrition work here at the Optimum Health Clinic, which has been a really helpful way of getting more insight and clarity and path forwards. If you do want to find out more about the nutrition department or generally the Optimum Health Clinic, you can go to theoptimumhealthclinic.com. You can request a free information pack. You can also, after reading through that, book a free 15-minute chat to speak to either our psychology team and or nutrition team to find out how we may be able to help you get more clarity on what's going on, but also find some pathways forward. Tomorrow it's Wellness Wednesday, and as a kind of natural, I think, follow-up really to today's session, I'm talking with Kirsty Cullen, who is Director of Nutrition here at the Optimum Health Clinic, and we're exploring the question of whether eating well is enough. People will often say, well, I've eaten a really good diet. Surely that's enough to support recovery from fatigue. So that's coming up tomorrow here on Everyday Alex on Wellness Wednesday.